For centuries, the idea of demonic possession was, well, one of the most terrifying things a person could imagine. You've got the uncontrollable rage, the strange voices, the violent convulsions. It all just seemed to scream that some supernatural force was taking over. But what if the demons weren't coming from the outside? What if they were coming from inside our own minds? So today, let's dive into the fascinating science that finally unmasked the true cause of possession.
To really get a handle on the science, we have to step back in time. For most of human history, there just wasn't any other way to explain these incredibly disturbing events. When someone you love suddenly changed, becoming violent and totally unrecognizable, the only explanation that seemed to fit the sheer horror of it all had to be a supernatural one.
And it's wild, because historical texts from cultures all over the world are just filled with descriptions like this. I mean, can you imagine seeing it firsthand? A person screaming in a voice that isn't their own, their body thrashing with this frightening strength, saying things that sounded like total gibberish. It's really easy to see why people pointed to malevolent spirits.
What's really interesting is just how consistent these signs were across totally different cultures and times. You had the voice changes, this sudden, almost superhuman strength, and this bizarre new hostility towards people or things they once cherished. And then afterward, they often had spotty memories, or sometimes no memory at all of what they'd done. For a priest or a shaman, this was basically a checklist for possession.
Okay, but this is where the story takes a huge turn, right out of the world of superstition and into the halls of science. The real culprit, it turns out, wasn't some demon. It was a series of electrical and chemical misfires inside the most complex object in the known universe, the human brain.
So the first major clue comes from the temporal lobe. Now, this part of your brain is a huge hub for processing memories, emotions, and language. When neurons in this area start misfiring, maybe due to an injury or epilepsy or something else, the results can be absolutely dramatic. It can literally change someone's personality, alter their voice, and, this is crucial, create this profound and terrifying feeling of being a puppet, controlled by some outside force.
And if we dig a little deeper, we find the limbic system, which is kind of the brain's emotional command center. When this system goes into overdrive, it's like an emotional amplifier gets cranked up to 11. That explains the sudden, violent bursts of rage or terror. And that aversion to sacred objects? It's not actually about the object itself. It's the limbic system misfiring and attaching a powerful negative emotional charge to something that used to be meaningful.
So, what about the memory gaps? Why couldn't people remember what happened? Well, that's explained by something called post-ictal amnesia. After a huge neurological event like a seizure, the brain's memory recording system basically just shuts down. In a way, it's a protective measure, blocking out the trauma. But to everyone else, it just looked like more proof that the real person wasn't home during the episode.
So the key takeaway here is that this wasn't some aha moment that happened overnight. No, it was a slow, difficult process of mapping this mysterious territory inch by inch, moving from fear to facts. This whole journey is really a major win for the scientific method over ancient superstition.
You can see the progression so clearly. For thousands of years, the only tool in the toolbox was exorcism. Then in the 1800s, some pioneering doctors started to notice a link between brain injuries and these bizarre behaviors, especially with something they were just starting to understand called temporal lobe epilepsy. But the real game changer? That came in the 20th century, with technology that could finally let us see the brain in action.
And this technology was everything. An EEG, which measures electrical activity, could show the literal storm of misfiring neurons during an episode. An MRI could reveal a tiny tumor or some scar tissue in the temporal lobe that was causing all the trouble. For the very first time, the demon had a physical location. The invisible was finally made visible.
And this, right here, is the most important part of the whole story. Once we understood the cause, we could finally move from exorcism to effective treatment. This knowledge didn't just satisfy our curiosity, it paved the way for compassion and for actual healing. So today, instead of rituals, we have a whole toolkit of medical interventions. Antiepileptic medications can calm those electrical storms in the brain. Antipsychotics can help manage the severe emotional and behavioral issues. And in some cases, surgery can actually remove the source of the problem, like a tumor, and stop the episodes for good. The fact that these treatments work so well is really the ultimate proof. When you bring the brain's chemistry and electrical signals back into balance, the so-called possessed behaviors, they just vanish.
The person's true self, which was in there the whole time, is finally able to come back to the surface. It's an absolutely remarkable restoration of a person's life.
So the transformation is just profound. We've gone from an approach based on fear to one based on medicine. We've shifted our understanding of the cause from some evil influence to the concrete science of the brain. And most importantly, the outcome is no longer fear and suffering, but recovery and a life given back.
So, as we wrap this up, we're left with a pretty powerful question to think about. The story of possession is this stark reminder that what seems mysterious or even supernatural to us today might just be a complex natural process that we don't have the tools to understand yet. It really makes you wonder what's next, doesn't it?